The first author is the internationally best-selling author of the Timothy Wilde trilogy, and the third book in the trilogy, which, as we all know, is the Money Book. The Fatal Flame went on sale yesterday while my dad was sweating at Hedwig the Angry Inch. She has created a story for us called The Bird Daly's Interactive Twitter Tale, which was written with help from her Twitter followers. Please welcome Lyndsay Faye.
Super cool dance intro was super cool, right? Okay. So I loved working on this project because it was essentially me just saying I interact with my Twitter followers all the time, and why would I not do a sort of pseudo choose your own adventure kind of thing with them, with a short story. So that's what I created, and here it is. And thank you for being here, because all y'all are awesome. It was not Bird Daly's birthday. Actually, to be honest, Bird had no way of knowing whether or not this was true. Sharing a birthday with her friend Sophia would have been a curious coincidence, but stranger things had happened to Bird since escaping Madame Silky Marsh's brothel, where Bird had been born. Bird now had a room at the orphanage, shared with only two other parentless kindred like her, never-grown dead rabbits with coldly curling lips and calloused hands. She had a new frock from the crate of used hogs just delivered, not one so fine as the dress Mr. V gave her from the trunk for needy voters at the Tammany meeting, and not remotely so costly as the ones she had worn when forced to stay awake at night to earn her keep. But it was a pretty orange muslin that set off her dark red hair and fit her 8-year-old limbs, maybe 9-year-old limbs, who could say for certain, perfectly. She had friends here at the orphanage, friends like Magpie and Jem and Neil and Tabby and Sophia, who came from dark places and locked rooms just as she did. And she had a better friend still, Mr. Timothy Wilde, Copper Star 107 of the New York Police Force, and Mr. V's younger brother. So what if she had no proper birthday? Nor never would, Bird thought, swallowing hard and smiling as Sophia took her first bite of the little seed cake the cooks had made for her. Bird was still alive, day after unmarked day, alive, and that was something. It was late afternoon in the gardens of the Irish Catholic orphanage on the corner of Prince and Mott Streets in Ward 14. And the year was 1845, because years had birthdays, even if Bird didn't, she realized, and she felt her chest grow tighter at that realization. She needed to leave this little spree among the pepper-smelling tomato cages, get away from the careless laughter and the looks her friends were beginning to cast her. So Bird stood up from the cracked stone bench where she had been perched. "What's wrong, Bird?" her friend Jem called, his active brows twitching. "You've nary tasted Sophia's cake and its aces," Tabby echoed. He had a few stray crumbs on his lips, and his cat-like amber eyes were wide and curious. "Bird, why do you look like that? Come and sit with me," Sophia called. But Bird shook her head, forcing the old waxen smile onto her lips, and fled for refuge, any refuge. So this was the part where I started asking people what she does next. And she goes to the attics. The door of the staircase leading to the orphanage's vast attics was always locked, but Bird had long ago learned to pick such barriers with letter openers and butter knives. This time, she had only a hairpin, but she was a dab hand with those too, and the latch gave under her fingers with a welcoming click. Bird breathed in the warm, dusty air of the garret. It was filled with shrouded furniture draped in white, like dozens of spectral brides awaiting weddings that would never come. Whenever Bird felt like a ghost, transparent among all the other abandoned kitchen, she came here for the silence and the view of the tree in the yard beyond, thick with sparrows chattering secrets to each other. The sound of footsteps mounting the stairs reached her ears, and a cold fist closed around Bird's heart. She didn't know the consequences for sneaking about here, but long habit told her to disappear, so she vanished instantly under a sheet. The gap between the cotton and the floor left her just enough room to do one of the things Bird did best: spy. The attic door creaked open, and a boy called Peter entered. Bird knew him only slightly. He had come to their orphanage with a group of other boy Kinchin Mabs her friend Timothy had rescued from a body house down by the fish-smelling docks. Though only 11, or perhaps 12, he had a hard look to his Mazard, with the square jaw of a fighter and black brows that plunged toward his wide-bridged nose. Looking around furtively with hard, canny eyes, Peter lifted a sheet and shoved something hastily under the cushion of a broken chair before vanishing as quick as he came. Bird waited until the sound of his footsteps faded, her breath trapped in her chest. Right? IKR. Creeping slowly from under the cloth, Bird stood to her full height and hesitated a moment. She did not know whether she wanted to know what Peter had hidden. He frightened her with his stark silences and his dark glares, and she knew the other Kinchin felt the same. But Bird's natural curiosity began to simmer within her bones, and she boldly walked to the hiding place Peter had chosen and threw back the covering, lifting the cushion with her other hand. A pearl-handled knife lay before her. At first, Bird felt as if this was a quite natural thing to hide, but within seconds she began to worry. Peter was not trusted by the other Kinchin. Peter had never done her any wrong, but he was definitely less forthcoming than his other pals from the dockside brothel. Bird wondered whether any of them would be safe. Neil, Tabby, Jem, Sophia, who was celebrating a birthday and therefore could not be harmed, not today of all days, if the knife remained hidden here among the still silent furniture draped in veils. Bird snatched the knife up and quickly hid it in a pocket. She did not know what to do, and under normal circumstances she would ask her friend Timothy Wilde. But Timothy was working, she imagined, and his home was a walk of some 20 minutes or more, and anyway, Timothy would worry. Bird, as an accomplished liar, knew that delivering the truth to Timothy Wilde would only serve to disquiet both of them. But an instant later, she hit upon a better option. True facts. She would consult Valentine Wilde because Mr. V always knew what to do when something was troubling, and he was less liable to grow peppery at her for having accidentally landed in trouble than his younger brother Timothy. In any case, his firehouse was much closer to the orphanage, and Bird knew that he was on shift Tuesday through Friday. Donning a light cloak, Bird placed the pearl-handled knife in her pocket and departed the orphanage. The shadows were thinning into long, lean lines, and no one noted her as she confidently stepped out of one of the side exits. 5 minutes later, she was in Ward 8, and another 5 minutes after that, she saw the red She saw the red brick building that housed the Knickerbocker 21 engine house and stepped inside. For a moment, Bird was frightened. The place was full of fire rabbits, all looking at her askance. But very quickly, Mr. V spied her and flashed her a grin of welcome. Mr. V was very much bigger than his brother Timothy. He was also a bit more savvy, Bird thought, and thus better suited to answer her question about what to do with the knife. Mr. V called out, "A moll'll come to see us, and damned if she isn't a lady and a jolly good sport to boot. Miss Daly, step into my office." Bird realized as Mr. V led her up the stairs to where the fire dog slept that he was surprised over her being there, but he was not annoyed, and that seemed a blessing. Bird exhaled a small sigh. "Now then," Mr. V announced, sitting on a plank that seemed to serve as a bed and patting the spot beside him. "What's the lay, little cat? I've never had the pleasure of seeing you gratis, so I hope you're after a favor, and I'm happy to do the job." Bird was grateful for this kindness on his part, and she wordlessly drew out the knife. "Where did you come by this?" Mr. V wondered, turning it over in his brawl-scarred hands. "At the orphanage," Bird confessed. "I know who had it, but I didn't like to think of them keeping it hidden. All of us snug in our ken, but like enough to be shivved and—" "Stop," Mr. V ordered, holding up a hand. "Arrest that thought, little cat. No one is going to be shivved. As it happens, and paint me about as green as you're looking, this is bloody Bill Jackson's potato peeler. I can't imagine how it came to be at the orphanage, but he's been tattling all over town that he was robbed, and here you are with the item in question. I owe you a favor or 10 already, but may I take this off your hands in exchange for the reward he's offering?" Bird's head was spinning by this time. "What reward?" $5, Mr. V said soberly. Bird, as an accomplished liar, could tell when fibs were being told to her. $7, she requested. "I'll give the 5 to the rabbit who took it, but keep 2 as a finder's fee." Mr. V started laughing fit to raise the dead, wincing as if too much humor might very well kill him. "All right, little cat," he said, counting out American eagles. "You came to the right place, after all." It's my favorite part. When Bird found Peter, it was in the garden again, but now it was dark, and he seemed morose. Bird approached him with 2 golden eagles in her palm, and he looked at her disbelieving. "I'm sorry, but I saw you with the shiv," Bird said. "I didn't feel right about it. Something just didn't fadge, and I pawned it. Here's your share." And Peter burst out crying. Bird had never seen such a thing before, a strong fellow like Peter being so overcome. But she wanted to know the story, so she sat down and waited for him to calm himself. "I'm nary an orphan, I'm a half-orphan," Peter told her. "My dad isn't any sort of angel. In fact, to manage to get some kitchen physic from time to time, I used to pick his pockets and pawn whatsoever I found. It fed me, and he always imagined that he was so bloody lushy by the end of the day that he must have lost whatever it was I'd snatched. I was in the habit, and he came to visit me yesterday, so I figged the shiv straight from out his gropus before I'd even told myself not to." "He doesn't know that you took it," Bird said soberly. "I know it doesn't kill you to have done that, but it wasn't wrong either. Not as far as I think. He has it back and you weren't considering. I don't like that fact. I don't like that when my dad visits, I pickpocket him," Peter admitted. "But I don't really have any choice." Bird considered this statement and could sympathize, and she determined to tell the copper stars nothing more of the case that she had solved.